My beloved child, hear me with trembling urgency, because I have been standing outside the door of your heart longer than you realize, knocking with patience, waiting with mercy. But your hesitation has stretched too far, and the danger of your silence is now heavier than the sound of your excuses. I have reached out through sleepless nights when tears soaked your pillow. I have whispered into moments where you thought no one noticed your pain. I have surrounded you with signs that pierced through the noise of your distractions. Yet still, you linger at a distance as though eternity will wait until you are ready. But I tell you with holy seriousness, eternity does not pause, the clock does not slow, and the shadows of deception are thickening while you delay. You believe you have time to decide tomorrow, but tomorrow is not promised, and your refusal to open the door has already cost you battles that should have been victories, strength that should have been yours, and protection that should have shielded you. I am not speaking these words to frighten you, but to wake you from the dangerous slumber of comfort that blinds you to what is at stake. For as I stand knocking, the enemy prowls to steal what belongs to you, to rob the destiny I have written with my blood, to chain the joy I intended to crown you with, and your hesitation feeds his advance. Why will you keep me waiting when I hold in my hands the answers you begged for, the healing you cried for, the direction you pleaded for, the love you thought was lost forever, yet still, you keep the door bolted, whispering later, while the weight of unseen storms is pressing closer. I will not force myself upon you, because love demands your choice. But understand this truth: the window of mercy is not an endless corridor, and the longer you remain undecided, the louder the consequences will grow, until your voice is drowned out by regret. I have been standing with open arms, not just to forgive, but to transform, not just to comfort, but to restore, not just to enter your house, but to become the foundation beneath it. Yet the sound of my knocking is being smothered by the voices you keep entertaining, the distractions you keep feeding, the fears you keep rehearsing, and the pride that tells you there is still another chance waiting tomorrow. Child, let the urgency of this moment sear into your spirit. Time is thinner than you think. The cracks in the door are already showing light slipping away, and the longer you resist, the harder it will be to hear me when the storms rage louder. This is not a casual invitation. This is a rescue call. This is the moment where heaven leans over your life and says, decide now, because I cannot cover what you refuse to surrender. I cannot heal what you keep hidden. I cannot lead where you will not follow. But if you will rise right now, if you will throw wide the door of your heart, you will find me standing not in judgment, but in unstoppable mercy, not with punishment, but with unshakable promise, not with wrath, but with a love so fierce it refuses to abandon you even when you abandon yourself. And I am pleading as your Savior, your friend, your Redeemer. Open to me now, before the night falls heavier, before the storm closes in, before the door of opportunity that is open today is shut forever, because I am still here, waiting for you. But I will not wait endlessly, and the urgency you feel burning through these words is not from your imagination. It is my spirit tugging with the last thread of warning. Child, unlock the door, because time is running out, and I am still waiting. And as this very second passes, I need you to understand what's slipping through your fingers: not simply missed moments or postponed decisions, but irreversible exchanges, sacred purposes traded for fleeting pleasures, eternal treasures silently exchanged for temporary comforts, all because you assumed there would always be another chance, another reminder, another whisper. But child, there are crossroads in life where the wrong turn cannot be undone, where my covering cannot protect what your pride refuses to surrender. And you are nearing one of those junctions right now. The delay is no longer harmless, it is spiritual sabotage, and you cannot see the full price of your hesitation. But I can, and that's why I'm pressing closer with this warning before you cross the point of no return, before you forfeit what was designed for your legacy, your lineage, your life's calling. You've grown too used to mercy as if it were an unlimited currency. But even mercy has boundaries when continually rejected, and you're standing on the very edge of those boundaries now. Yes, I still love you, and yes, I still long to lift you, but there is a cost to continued neglect, and it does not only touch your soul, it affects generations you haven't even met yet, destinies you were assigned to unlock, people you were meant to carry toward their healing. But with every moment you spend waiting, that responsibility shifts further from your reach. I'm not saying this to push you into fear, but to remove the illusion that passivity is harmless. Because it's not just your delay, it's the enemy's delight. Because he thrives in your indecision. He builds strongholds in your postponements. He gains ground in your refusal to act. And the longer you stall, the more footholds he claims in places meant to be my sanctuary. Right now you feel the tension between comfort and calling, between fear and obedience, between convenience and surrender, and I see that war playing out deep inside you even now. But child, your window is thinning, and I will not keep this door ajar forever. Not because I want to leave, but because even I honor your choices, and I cannot enter where I'm continually denied. The weight of this moment is holy, and it demands an answer. No more delays, no more distractions, no more pretending that you're undecided when your heart knows exactly what I'm asking. Give me your full yes, not your half promises or emotional reactions, not your convenient agreement during storms, but your absolute surrender, because this season won't cycle back around. This particular grace you feel tugging on you now won't wait around indefinitely. And when it lifts, you will feel the void, not because I left you, but because you kept refusing what was available while it was within reach. And child, I don't want to see you mourning what you could have embraced, grieving what you were meant to rejoice in, or watching from a distance what you were supposed to be walking in, simply because you assumed time was always on your side. Do you not know time bows to no one but the Father? And when he signals that the window is shutting, no man, no prayer, no cry can reopen it again. So before you lose what can't be recovered, before your delay becomes your deepest regret, before your indecision becomes the reason you miss the miracle, respond now, because right now is still grace, right now is still access. Right now the veil is not yet closed, but it is moving, and the sound of my voice today is not just love. It's warning wrapped in compassion. It's urgency laced with promise. And it's me, your Savior, fighting for your attention before you step into a darkness you weren't meant to taste. Hear me. Every second you remain unmoved is a second the enemy uses to steal what I died to give you. And I won't let that happen without giving you every possible chance to act, so take it now. This is the hour. This is the breath. This is the urgency sounding in your spirit, because I am still here, barely a whisper away, but I will not knock forever. There was a time when I gently nudged your heart, not with thunder or fire, but with stillness, through the quiet ache you felt at night, through moments of longing you couldn't explain, through the eyes of strangers who unknowingly echoed my truth, but you mistook my gentleness for something optional. And now the volume must rise, not because my nature has changed, but because your resistance has grown louder than my whisper. You trained yourself to ignore the inner pull, brushing it aside like a passing emotion, when it was me, the one who formed you, trying to draw you back before the shadows deepened. And now, as the spiritual climate thickens, I must break through the fog you've allowed to settle over your soul, and I will not stand by while you walk toward collapse without interruption. Child, this is no longer a season of suggestions, this is a moment of reckoning, and I will not sugarcoat the truth when your eternity hangs in the balance. You've allowed distractions to steal sacred time and compromise to build walls between us, but I'm not addressing your behavior alone, I'm targeting the root, the place inside you where pride and pain built a shelter and locked me out while pretending to follow me outwardly. I am done speaking in symbolic language when clarity is what will save you, and I'm raising my voice not in anger but in fierce love, because you're drifting faster than you realize, and your silence has become an agreement with the enemy's plan for you. You think delay is neutral, but delay is a silent yes to destruction, and my voice cannot compete with everything you keep entertaining unless you choose to silence the noise and prioritize what is eternal. I have called you by name more times than you've counted, and now I am speaking not just for comfort but for confrontation, because your soul is more valuable than your comfort, your future more sacred than your schedule, and I will shake what must be shaken to remove what blocks my presence in your life. The things you once tolerated have begun to turn against you, haven't they? The very voices that once made you feel powerful are now robbing you of peace, and that is not coincidence, that is me, stripping away every false comfort, not as punishment, but as preparation for a necessary decision. No more excuses, no more delays, no more pretending you're confused when you know exactly what I've been asking of you. The inner war you feel is not confusion, it's conviction. and it will only increase until you either surrender or harden. And I warn you, child, if you choose hardness, you will walk into a silence I never intended for you, a spiritual drought that was avoidable, but the choice is yours. I'm speaking with urgency now because the time of soft nudges is ending, and the season of loud decisions has come. You don't need another confirmation, another dream, another prophecy, because you already know deep within what's required. And this moment is not about information, it's about transformation. And transformation begins with obedience. I don't want a reaction, I want a response that says, "Yes, Lord, I will follow even when it's hard, even when it costs me everything," because that kind of response opens doors that fear has kept locked for too long. And I am not speaking this way to crush you, but to rescue you before delay becomes disaster, to awaken you before sleep becomes spiritual death, to stir you before you settle into patterns that cannot be reversed without pain. The hour is urgent. The wait is eternal. And this is not a rehearsal, this is the moment heaven watches with bated breath, waiting to see if you will finally take the step you've avoided for so long. I am not angry with you, I am contending for your soul with all of heaven's power behind me. And I will not sugarcoat what needs to be shouted, because your destiny is too precious to let you fall into the trap of waiting for a better moment that may never come. Child, I am calling again, but this time, not softly, this time I am roaring over you, because love will not stay silent when death is near, and I have declared over you that today is the hour. And this cry is not for emotion, it is for eternal impact. You can try to mask it beneath distractions, drown it in busyness, or bury it beneath routines, but you know the truth. You have felt my presence press upon your spirit in moments no one else could see, and it wasn't imagination, emotion, or coincidence. It was me, placing divine tension inside your soul to remind you that I've never stopped pursuing you. You recognized it when your heart raced in the silence, when your conscience trembled without a single word spoken, when something deep inside you began to stir every time you stood on the edge of surrender but pulled back, afraid of what full obedience might cost. Child, I saw the tears you wiped away quickly so others wouldn't notice, the lump in your throat when my name pierced through your carefully guarded thoughts, and the way your mind tried to rationalize what your spirit already confirmed. Those nudges weren't passing feelings. They were my spirit interceding, reaching through the fog, inviting you back to the place where you belong. But instead of yielding, you hesitated and called it bad timing, or not ready, or too much pressure. And every time you silenced the voice inside you, the distance grew, but not because I move. It's because your resistance created a wall my mercy couldn't tear down without your permission. I won't violate your will, but I will expose what has crept in while you ignored my pull. So many compromises dressed up as harmless habits, so many tiny agreements with comfort that have now grown into chains, and I've been trying to break them from the inside out through conviction, through dreams, through restlessness that wasn't punishment, it was protection, trying to reroute you before damage settled in permanently. And now you stand in a place where my nudging has grown louder, not because I want to overwhelm you, but because your sensitivity has grown dull, and I am not willing to let you drift further without disruption. My whispers were always meant to woo you, but now they are warning, sacred signals that your delay is becoming spiritually dangerous, and your heart knows it. You've begun to notice how the things that once brought satisfaction now leave you hollow, how your laughter feels strained, how the noise around you can't quiet the ache within, and that is not a sign of failure, that is evidence that my call has never stopped. But child, be warned, there will come a time when the nudges fade, not because I've given up on you, but because repeated resistance can make you numb to what once shook you to your core. And I won't let that happen without shaking the ground beneath your indifference, because I love you far too much to stay silent while you slowly slip away. You keep telling yourself you'll respond when things are less chaotic, when you're more stable, when the emotions settle, but your spirit isn't waiting for a perfect moment. It's waiting for a decision, and that decision must be made before the internal flame flickers out completely. Don't think you can ignore this stirring and still expect the door to remain open indefinitely. Grace is available, yes, but grace ignored eventually transitions into consequences you didn't anticipate. And I am not speaking from anger. I am pleading from a place of deepest love, because I have seen what's ahead, and I know how dark it becomes when my light is continually rejected. You don't need another confirmation. Your soul has already agreed with me in moments when no one was watching, and now the time has come to stop pretending you didn't feel it. I've interrupted your thoughts during meaningless conversations. I've interrupted your sleep when you tried to shut it all off. I've even used silence to speak louder than words, but you've been afraid to fully face what obedience requires. And now I'm telling you, fear will not save you, hesitation will not carry you, and delay will not rescue you. The only way forward is full surrender, not partial movement, not emotional response, but actual, immediate yielding. This isn't about religion or performance, it's about responding to the voice you've been sensing, the one that's been getting louder because the time to act is narrowing, and the moment to turn fully toward me is now, before the sound becomes distant and the urgency is replaced with regret. Child, I am still drawing you, but this drawing won't last forever. Respond while the stirring is still strong. The interruptions, the sudden closures, the unexplainable delays, the doors that wouldn't open no matter how much you pushed, those weren't random events plotted by chance or unlucky patterns. They were strategic barriers placed by my mercy to keep you from walking into places that would have shattered your purpose, relationships that would have corrupted your character, situations that would have compromised your soul before you even realized what was happening. But instead of seeing my hand behind the disruption, you called it bad timing, misfortune, rejection, when in reality, it was me rerouting you because I knew what you couldn't see, and I refused to let you succeed at something that would destroy you from the inside out. Every canceled plan that made you frustrated, every person who walked away without closure, every opportunity that slipped through your fingers, those weren't losses. They were interventions, rescue missions carried out by heaven before you made a choice that couldn't be undone. And I know you've been confused, wondering why things haven't aligned the way you expected, but that's because alignment without obedience leads to collapse, and I would rather disrupt your expectations temporarily than watch your spirit suffer eternally. Child, when you pray for protection, sometimes the answer comes disguised as denial, and you've been misinterpreting those moments, not realizing that the very things you saw as setbacks were evidence of my involvement. I've been blocking what your impatience tried to force, not because I delight in your delay, but because I love you too much to let you build on ground that isn't stable. You keep asking me why things didn't work out, why the timeline didn't unfold the way you envisioned, but what you call unanswered prayers, I call divine redirection. And if I had allowed you to proceed down the paths you were convinced were right, you would have lost parts of yourself that were never meant to be touched by that kind of trauma. I've preserved you through delays you didn't understand, through closed chapters that ended without explanation, through connections that ended suddenly, not because you were abandoned, but because you were being preserved. I never needed your full understanding for me to execute my plan. I only needed your willingness to trust when clarity wasn't available, and even when you didn't trust, I still protected you anyway. But now I need you to recognize what you've dismissed, because the warnings are intensifying, and if you continue to ignore them, they won't just inconvenience you, they will expose you to storms you were supposed to avoid. The flashing lights, the unease in your gut, the heaviness that settles over situations that seem appealing on the surface, those are not accidents. Those are spiritual indicators screaming that something is off, and you must stop brushing them aside like background noise. When I show you a sign, take it seriously, because I don't issue warnings unless danger is present, and I don't withdraw my peace without purpose. If you feel tension in a place that once brought joy, don't label it as overthinking. Pause and ask me what I'm trying to show you, because I will never stop giving you signs, but if you continue to ignore them, they will stop serving as protection and start becoming the evidence of what you chose to disregard. I am not trying to punish you with these interruptions, I am pleading with you through them, and if you keep walking past them, you will eventually walk into consequences that I tried to shield you from. Child, this is your wake-up call. The repeated patterns, the closed doors, the loss of appetite for what once excited you, the weight in your chest when you consider going back to what I already called you out of. None of it is meaningless. All of it is mercy wrapped in warning, and it is time to stop assigning human logic to spiritual direction. This is not a coincidence. This is covenant protection trying to guide you into the alignment you were born to walk in, and if you continue treating my signals as optional, you will miss what was reserved for your obedience. You asked me to lead you, And I am just not in the way you expected, because I don't lead you to comfort. I lead you to purpose, and purpose requires letting go of what looks safe, but is spiritually lethal. Child, recognize the signs before they become your regret, because they were never just disruptions, they were love disguised as detours. What makes this moment so critical is the illusion that surrounds it, the whisper that keeps telling you there's plenty left, that tomorrow will welcome you with open arms, that you can delay obedience without cost. But that voice is not from me. It is the most dangerous lie hell has ever crafted, and it's dressed in comfort, disguised as logic, cloaked in the familiar cadence of postponement. It speaks gently to lull you into passivity, convincing you that nothing urgent is unfolding, that you're in control of how long you'll be given, but time is not your servant, nor is it yours to command. It is a river flowing toward eternity, and each moment you float without direction is a moment you drift further from the shore you were designed to reach. You cannot see the full measure of what's vanishing with each heartbeat, but I see the opportunities evaporating while you weigh whether surrender is necessary. I see the people waiting on the other side of your obedience. I see the battles that could already be won if you'd only stepped forward when I first prompted you. Child, delay is not neutral, it's theft in disguise, and while you hesitate, time is doing what time always does. It moves on, silently, without mercy for indecision. The deception is that the door will always be there. The moment will always repeat. The stirring will always feel fresh, but the truth is, these divine invitations have windows, and windows don't wait for convenience. What I offered you yesterday is not promised again in the same way tomorrow, and that is not to frighten you, it is to awaken you. You've been lulled into believing that the seasons rotate on your schedule, but in the kingdom, timing is sacred, and when a moment of alignment passes, you cannot rewind the heavens to retrieve what you dismissed. You keep assuming there will be a better time, a more peaceful environment, a calmer heart, but those are excuses clothed in wisdom, and they've already cost you more than you realize. There have been doors I prepared that closed while you were distracted, connections I ordained that withered while you overanalyzed, assignments I handed you that were passed on to others because you insisted on waiting until you felt ready. And still, I came back for you, because my love doesn't walk away after one refusal, but this is no longer about one missed chance. This is about a pattern of hesitation becoming a habit, and habits become cycles that bind you until you forget what freedom ever felt like. I am speaking now to break that pattern before it hardens into spiritual paralysis, because you were never meant to live in this loop of almost responding, almost obeying, almost stepping, and you were created to walk boldly in the fullness of my plans. And those plans require urgency. Every lie that tells you it's fine to wait is pulling you into a slow sleep, a numbness that will one day leave you stunned that the window closed without warning. And while you think nothing is happening, so much as angels are waiting for your movement. Assignments are being reshuffled. What was meant for you is being delayed, not because I withheld it, but because you never positioned yourself to receive it. And the more you justify the waiting, the easier it becomes to live without the fire, without the ache for me, without the depth of surrender that once called you in the middle of the night. Do you not see how subtle the drift has become? How you've replaced urgency with routine, hunger with comfort, pursuit with procrastination, and still believe you're on the right path? That is the poison of this deception. It doesn't come with red flags. It comes with dullness. So I'm shaking you not to hurt you, but to pull you out before you sleep through the turning point of your destiny. I'm not telling you to panic. I'm telling you to move, to respond while this moment is open, to choose action over delay, to say yes now instead of later, because later has already cost you enough. Child, I don't want to see you cry over what could have been, so I'm sounding the alarm now. This is the time. This is the chance, and the deception that says you have more is the very thing stealing everything I intended to give you. What you must understand now is that this isn't merely a gentle call to return, it is a lifeline being thrown into waters that are rising faster than you realize. While you've been trying to decide if you're ready to respond, the tide around you has already begun to shift, and what was once still ground is becoming unstable, not because I want to frighten you, but because spiritual realities don't wait for your comfort, they move on divine timing, and I can no longer afford to speak to you softly when danger is approaching with full force. Child, I am not merely reaching out, I am intervening, intercepting, interrupting your descent before you slip too deep to sense me at all. This is not about inviting you to behave better or to follow rules. It's about me breaking through before the storm that has been circling finally breaches the borders of your life and swallows the things you love most. I am moving to shield you from what your eyes cannot yet see, from consequences that have been gathering in silence, from chains being forged in darkness while you entertain the illusion that everything is fine. I see the traps being set behind the scenes, the conversations the enemy is having about you, the plans being drafted in realms you don't perceive, and I will not allow them to proceed without giving you one final chance to move into safety. And that safety is not a place, it is a posture, a position of yieldedness where I can fight for you without resistance, where my covering can wrap around what you cannot control, where my authority can dismantle what is trying to infect your future. You've been feeling a heaviness, not because you're broken, but because your spirit has been sensing this spiritual shift, and the weight you carry is the proof that a decision must be made now, not later. I am reaching with power, not passivity. I am breaking down doors the enemy has used to gain legal access to your mind, your emotions, your peace, and I'm telling you that if you will let me rescue you, you won't have to feel the full impact of what's been forming behind the curtain of delay. But you must understand, rescue requires release, and I cannot pull you from the edge while you're clinging to the very thing that's pulling you over it. You keep thinking you can manage the distance, that you're strong enough to keep going a little longer before choosing fully, but it's not about strength anymore. It's about timing, and the time is almost gone. I'm not offering improvement, I'm offering deliverance, and deliverance doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It demands urgent trust, radical surrender, immediate action. You keep asking for confirmation, but your soul already knows the truth. It knows that what feels familiar is no longer safe, that what you once called harmless is now dangerous, and that the longer you stay where you are, the harder it becomes to hear me clearly. The static is increasing because the enemy wants to drown out my voice, wants to blur the urgency, wants to convince you that you're imagining the pressure rising, but I assure you, you are not imagining this. You are discerning the shift, and if you ignore it, you will find yourself surrounded by consequences that could have been avoided had you simply responded when I reached the first time. But I haven't stopped reaching, not yet. This is me fighting for your soul while you still have time, me placing fire in your bones so you can't sleep through this moment, me disrupting the patterns you've settled into because I refuse to let you perish in something I already died to free you from. My child, I'm not just knocking, I'm standing in front of the pit that's opening beneath your feet, urging you to run toward me while there's still ground to stand on. And you don't need to understand every detail, you just need to move now, because this rescue isn't about escape, it's about restoration, redemption, rebirth. And if you'll step into it, I will handle what's coming, but if you stay where you are, the protection you need cannot reach you. I'm here with urgency, not suggestion. Respond while the rescue is still within reach. You've grown accustomed to the quiet between us, mistaking my long suffering for permission, assuming that because I haven't disrupted everything around you, everything within you is still intact. But child, this silence is not safety. It's a warning. It's not peace. It's a sign that your spirit is drifting out of range, that your awareness of me has dulled while the volume of the world has taken my place. And while you continue on, distracted by what looks normal, something sacred is fading inside you, not because I've left, but because you've built walls that my voice no longer echoes through. You've learned to function with low sensitivity, trained your heart to operate without constant connection, but that pattern is more dangerous than you understand. Spiritual distance doesn't always scream, it often hides in routine, in unchecked busyness, in laughter that covers fatigue, in religious motions that feel good but carry no power. And I must tell you now, this quiet between us is no longer tolerable. What was once meant to be intimacy has become interruption, and if it continues, you will begin to mistake absence for autonomy. You will assume your path is clear when, in reality, you're traveling without direction. I never created you to navigate this life without me, and yet, slowly, you've learned to suppress the ache for my presence, calling it growth, when in truth it's been a slow surrender to independence masked as maturity. Child, silence in your relationship with me doesn't indicate progress, it reveals neglect, and neglect leads to numbness, and numbness creates a void the enemy loves to fill. I'm speaking to you now to tear through that numbness, to invade this pause before it becomes permanent. to dismantle the illusion that you're okay without daily communion, because if this continues, you will find yourself responding to other voices that have no authority to lead you. Silence becomes agreement when left unchallenged, and I will not watch you agree with confusion, with stagnation, with spiritual dryness simply because you've forgotten how to respond to my nearness. I've been waiting not because I'm distant, but because your walls have grown thick, and I do not compete with what you protect more than my presence. Every time I stirred your heart to pray, to pause, to worship, and you ignored it, another brick was laid between us, not out of rebellion, but out of slow decline. And now, the silence is no longer harmless. It's a canyon between where you are and where I've called you, and you cannot afford to treat it casually anymore. I miss the moments where your heart responded instantly, where tears fell simply from hearing my name, where time with me was not a task but a treasure. But even now, I'm not calling you out to shame you. I'm calling you back to restore what's grown cold, but to restore it, you must break the silence, not with perfect words or impressive faith, but with honest surrender, with raw humility, with the cry that says, I need you again, because that cry, though quiet, carries the power to split the distance and bring my presence crashing through every wall. Child, I haven't changed. My longing for you remains, but I can't do this without your response. I've whispered in dreams, stirred through lyrics, spoken through the stillness, but now I must speak plainly. The quiet is no longer sacred. It's becoming deadly, and if you continue to delay, it will choke out your sensitivity until even my loudest call is met with indifference. And that is not where I want you, and that is not where you belong. You were made for closeness, for continual communion, for a connection that defies distraction. But it starts with the courage to acknowledge what's grown cold and invite me back into the place that once burned with fire. Don't let pride keep you distant. Don't let shame hold your tongue. Don't let regret silence your voice. Break the silence now, before this pause becomes your pattern. Speak to me, even if your voice trembles, even if the words feel foreign, even if you're not sure how to begin. Just begin, because I'm not looking for eloquence, I'm looking for honesty, and honesty invites my glory in ways performance never could. Child, this is your moment. Don't let the silence stretch further. Don't let another day pass without your voice calling mine, because I'm right here, waiting for your heart to shatter the stillness and bring revival where distance once lived. There are areas of your life you've tried to manage on your own, holding tightly with clenched fists while telling yourself you're in control, but control is an illusion when you're outside of my covering. I've watched you attempt to patch the broken parts, to strategize your way out of spiritual warfare, to guard wounds I was supposed to heal. But child, what you don't release, I cannot redeem. What you hide, I won't invade. And what you insist on protecting by your own strength becomes a target, because anything outside of surrender becomes exposed ground in a battlefield you weren't built to fight alone. I long to intervene, to surround, to fortify the places you've struggled most, but I will never force myself into the rooms you've locked me out of. And I see how fear has convinced you that if you let go, everything will collapse, when in truth, the collapse has already begun under the weight of your striving. You think you're preserving yourself by holding back, but withholding only keeps healing at a distance. And while you guard what's broken, the enemy sneaks in with counterfeit solutions, temporary highs, false affirmations, shallow peace, none of which satisfy, all of which drain. And while you tell me you trust me with your life, your silence over certain matters screams otherwise. Your silence over that trauma, that disappointment, that secret habit you never mention. Those are not just overlooked flaws, they are open doors, and until you bring them into my presence, they remain vulnerable. I never asked you to fix them, I asked you to give them to me. But instead, you've hidden them behind performance, masked them with productivity, and pretended they're under control, when in reality, they've been controlling you. My child, this is not about shame, it's about access, because what you hand over to me becomes my responsibility. But what you retain becomes your burden, and that burden is crushing you slowly. I don't need perfection, I need permission, because protection doesn't function where rebellion hides, and rebellion isn't always loud, it's subtle, often hiding in the phrase "I've got it," or "I'll deal with it later," or "I don't need help with this." But all the while, the very thing you're trying to manage is draining the life I've been trying to restore in you. And now, I am asking no, urging you to open your hands and surrender what you've hidden, because I cannot bless what you keep beneath the surface. I cannot strengthen what you won't expose, and I cannot protect what you choose to defend on your own terms. You've wept in private, wondering why certain areas remain chaotic, why breakthrough seems delayed. But I'm telling you now it's because access has not been granted. You've invited me into the outer courts, but refused to open the inner chambers, and I won't barge and I wait for your yes. Your real yes. The one that says, take it all, even the mess I'm afraid of, and until that happens, you'll continue feeling this tension between desire and distance, between wanting me close and yet keeping me far in the places that matter most. Child, the safest place you could ever be is fully surrendered, even if it feels risky, because surrender isn't weakness, it's alignment. Surrender is the strategy of the kingdom, the door to divine security, and the shield that causes every arrow to bounce off rather than penetrate. I am calling you to trust me deeper, not just with your dreams, but with your fears, not just with your plans, but with your past, not just with your worship, but with your wounds, because until everything is mine, nothing can truly be protected. The war around you is intensifying, and I can no longer allow you to keep pieces of yourself outside the walls of my shelter. I want to wrap your whole life in covering, not patches, not pieces, not portions, but the whole, undivided, fully yielded you, because that is where protection is established, where peace becomes unshakable, and where every attack loses its aim. Child, it's time to stop guarding what's hurting you, and start surrendering what's too heavy for you to carry. Place it all at my feet, not later, not eventually, not when you feel ready now, because the rescue I've prepared requires you to release what I've been waiting to receive. While you wrestle with delay, trying to decide if you'll fully yield or keep negotiating with partial obedience, the forces working against your destiny are not slowing down, they are accelerating, converging with precision to exploit every moment of hesitation you allow. What you perceive as harmless waiting is actually a widening gap where darkness creeps in undetected, weaving itself into conversations, distractions, habits, and thoughts you've brushed off as ordinary. But they are not their calculated insertions, designed to numb you into apathy, blind you from discernment, and pull you inches away from the path I paved for your advancement. You must know this isn't theory, it's warfare. And the warfare is no longer distant. It's knocking on the borders of your decision-making, testing your boundaries, feeding your confusion, and building narratives to keep you paralyzed under the illusion that there's no rush. But there's a clock ticking in the unseen, and every moment you delay becomes a permission slip for the adversary to invade territory that should belong to my kingdom in you. Child, the pressure you felt rising isn't just emotional, it's spiritual tension escalating, because the closer you come to transformation, the more violently the opposition seeks to sabotage it. You've been feeling resistance not because you're failing, but because you're too close to break through to stay asleep any longer, and the enemy knows it. He's not threatened by your routines or titles, but by your surrender, because your surrender unlocks power he cannot override. And right now, he's launching targeted assignments against your clarity, your peace, your relationships, and your confidence, hoping you'll remain distracted long enough to miss the urgency of what I'm telling you now. This is not a time to drift. This is not a season for delay. This is a critical turning point where your attention must return to what matters most, because everything that's been swirling around you has one goal: to keep you so entangled that you miss the alert I'm sounding in your spirit. And I refuse to let you fall prey to a slow collapse simply because you underestimated how fast opposition can move. The enemy has studied your patterns, learned your rhythms, observed your weaknesses, and he's constructing traps using what you tolerate, not what you resist. The compromises you've brushed aside as harmless are becoming footholds he's planting flags into. And if you don't close the access points now, the invasion will be subtle at first: fatigue, frustration, loss of passion, but it will escalate into spiritual erosion that affects your discernment, your stability, your relationships, and eventually your assignment. I am speaking this with urgency, not to scare you, but to awaken you, because while you've been waiting for a sign, the adversary has been preparing a setup, and the only thing that can stop it is your full realignment with me, not surface-level faith, but deep, intentional consecration that shuts down every entrance to your heart that isn't protected by my truth. Child, I'm not calling you into fear, I'm calling you into awareness, into the light of understanding that exposes where the cracks have formed, so that we can seal them before anything more slips in. You can't keep living like you're untouchable while leaving spiritual windows open. Bitterness, secrecy, pride, double-mindedness, these are invitations he looks for. And once he's in, he won't announce himself with noise. He'll work silently until the damage is done. But I've intercepted this process right now to warn you before that happens, to tell you that if you will return to full obedience, not only will the plans against you be dismantled, but I will restore every inch of ground that's already been stolen. The enemy may be moving quickly, but I move in authority, and the moment you respond, I step in with fire, with angels, with power he cannot contend with. So hear me. Don't ignore the urgency you feel rising in your soul. That's not panic, that's discernment. And it's my spirit shouting beneath the surface that this is the moment to cut ties with anything compromised, anything lukewarm, anything that drains instead of builds, because the enemy is closer than you think, but I am even closer, waiting for your surrender to activate the protection you need most right now. While you're weighing whether to take the next step, there's an invisible toll accumulating behind your indecision, opportunities silently fading, blessings rerouted, moments that were once wide open narrowing by the hour, and connections I orchestrated now growing distant, not because I'm withholding them, but because your hesitation is allowing what was supposed to flourish to wither. You assume nothing is changing while you wait, but everything is shifting, and not always in your favor. There are assignments that were designed for your hands, doors that would have unlocked with your name on them, but they require timing, not just willingness, and every time you stall, the alignment begins to move, because my purposes unfold according to divine order, not personal comfort. What you don't see are the people on the other side of your obedience, souls waiting for the light you carry, destinies hanging in balance, because your voice hasn't been released, your presence hasn't been positioned, your authority hasn't been activated. Child, this isn't just about you, it's about legacy, about generational shifts, about breaking cycles that have lived too long in your bloodline, and every time you pause for fear, the consequences ripple out further than you know. What you've called taking time to think has actually become a breeding ground for spiritual passivity, and that passivity is draining your hunger, dulling your discernment, stealing your fire, and all the while, you're believing you're being cautious when you're actually being delayed into disobedience. I'm not saying this to shame you. I'm revealing what the enemy hoped you'd never notice. That your delay isn't just costing you progress, it's costing you protection, direction, favor, and influence. And if it continues, it will begin costing you identity, clarity, and stability. This is why the pressure is growing heavier. The friction you're feeling isn't confusion. It's the tension of being out of sync with your purpose. You weren't created to remain undecided, and the more you linger in indecision, the more exhaustion sets in, because spiritual stagnation depletes strength. And you're not tired because you're doing too much, you're tired because you're not doing what you were designed for. And while you try to manage this season with routines and self-made strategies, the fruit of your delay is starting to show: restlessness, compromised focus, dwindling intimacy, misplaced priorities, and inner conflict that cannot be solved with distractions. You've cried out for answers, but answers come after movement, not before it. You want clarity before commitment, but I am asking for commitment that brings clarity, because trust doesn't always see the full path. It steps forward even when the map is unfinished. And every time you hold back, something designed to unlock stays closed, not because I changed my mind, but because I won't release what you're not ready to carry. And readiness doesn't mean you feel qualified, it means you've said yes, despite the uncertainty, despite the risk, despite the cost. I don't need your perfection, I need your availability. And your delay has been telling me you're not fully available, child. I'm still offering you everything, still holding open the doors, still standing with the key, still surrounding you with grace, but I cannot force you to step into what you're avoiding. You've asked me for more, but more requires motion, faith that dares to move when nothing is guaranteed, when everything in your logic screams to wait, to pause, to delay again. But one more delay may cost you what this entire season was preparing you for. And I say that not to threaten you, but to plead with you, because I've watched the price of hesitation rob my people for generations, and I don't want that story for you. You have the ability to shift everything right now, but it begins with surrender that doesn't wait for signs or feelings, it just says, Yes, Lord, and steps into alignment. And when you step, everything I've been holding for you will meet you there: resources, relationships, revival, revelation, but none of it can meet you in delay. Child, this moment carries eternal weight. What you decide now determines what can be recovered, what can be built, what can be birthed. And I'm not speaking lightly, I'm speaking as the one who knows what your next season holds. And I'm telling you, delay is draining you, and the longer you hesitate, the higher the cost becomes. You've whispered into the darkness, asking if I still hear you, waiting for something undeniable to break through the confusion, some confirmation, some proof, some moment that removes all doubt. And now, here it is. This very word is the response you requested, the sign you thought I might never send. You didn't need thunder, lightning, or a voice from the clouds, because I've chosen something more powerful: truth spoken directly into the center of your hesitation, reaching into the questions you've buried, the ones you were afraid to even articulate. You've walked through days wondering if you missed it, if I changed my mind about your future, if you somehow disqualified yourself, and yet I never stopped watching, never stopped planning, never stopped sending signals, though your eyes were too weary to recognize them. You expected something external, but I moved through circumstances, nudged your heart at odd hours, stirred your spirit while you scrolled past words that seemed to echo thoughts you hadn't voiced aloud. And now, this is not coincidence, it is intentional clarity, divine confirmation arriving in a way that bypasses your intellect and speaks directly to your soul. Child, this message is not random, and it is not for someone else, it's for you. The one who pleaded for direction in silence. The one who almost gave up because you thought heaven had gone quiet. I was never distant, I was aligning the moment when your readiness would meet my revelation. And now that it has, you cannot ignore it. The pull you feel right now, the pounding in your chest, the tremble beneath your understanding. This is me, verifying that you've heard correctly, that your instincts weren't wrong, that your longing to return wasn't foolish. It was divine preparation for this very hour. And while you asked for a sign, I am giving you more than that. I am giving you instruction, because signs without action lead to stagnation, but signs partnered with obedience unlock breakthrough. I've answered you, but now the responsibility is yours. What will you do with what I've spoken? Because answers that are ignored become judgment, and revelation that isn't responded to creates distance. I gave you this moment not to overwhelm you, but to rescue you from the paralysis that indecision has created. You thought you needed more proof, but proof has always followed movement. And right now, I am telling you that you are seen, heard, chosen, and being redirected, not out of anger, but because I refuse to let your cries go unanswered any longer. You didn't stumble upon these words. This encounter was orchestrated before your questions were even formed. And now the echo inside you is the evidence. Child, you don't need another confirmation. You need to believe this one. You need to act on what's already been revealed. You need to stop second-guessing what your spirit has already verified. Stop testing what I've made clear. Stop hesitating where I've illuminated. Stop delaying when I've already answered. This is not the time to search for alternatives, it's the moment to obey without excuse. Your breakthrough is not delayed because I haven't spoken, it's delayed because you've questioned what you knew was me. But I'm here again, speaking louder, clearer, and closer than before, not because you're forgotten, but because I love you too much to let confusion keep you bound. And now, you stand on a threshold not of understanding, but of trust, and crossing it means letting go of the need for more signs and stepping fully into what I've already made unmistakably clear. If you've ever wondered if I still respond, this is your evidence. If you've questioned whether I still have plans for you, this is the proof. If you've doubted your place in my purpose, this is your reminder that nothing about your destiny has been canceled. I allowed the waiting so you'd recognize the weight of what's been spoken now, and I'm inviting you to walk through the door that's standing wide open before it begins to close. Don't ask me for another sign, embrace the one I've just delivered, because heaven is watching how you respond to what you once begged for, and the future you're longing to walk into is waiting on the decision you make now. You've been measuring your worth by how well you perform, how little you fail, how often you get it right, as if your acceptance with me depends on flawless execution. But I never required perfection to begin the work, only willingness. I didn't call you because you were qualified, I called you because you were chosen. And I've been waiting, not for your performance to impress me, but for your heart to yield fully, to stop striving to earn what was already offered freely. I see how the pressure has been building, how shame has whispered that you're not enough, how guilt has convinced you to hold back until you clean yourself up. But child, you're missing the point entirely. I'm not looking for you to fix everything. I'm waiting for you to open your hands and finally release control. This has never been about your perfection, it's always been about your posture. And right now, the posture I need is surrender. Not the kind that says the words but holds back in fear. Not the kind that nods in agreement but never acts. But the kind that lays down resistance, abandons delay, and says, even with all my mess, I'm yours. I already know every flaw, every mistake, every failure you've tried to bury. And still I call you mine. I'm not shocked by your struggles, nor am I intimidated by your inconsistencies. What I'm looking for is a heart that says yes despite them. You've been trying to reach a level of spiritual maturity before showing up. But that's backward. I grow what's surrendered, not what's hidden in shame. Child, I didn't bleed on that cross so you would spend your life trying to prove yourself. I did it so you'd know you could come freely, boldly, completely, without fear of rejection, without hiding behind perfectionism that paralyzes you from ever moving forward. Stop letting your past decisions convince you that you forfeited the right to be used. Nothing surrendered is wasted, and nothing handed to me is ever discarded. I use what you lay down, not what you pretend doesn't exist. And right now, I'm drawing near, not because you've done everything right, but because your brokenness draws me in like a magnet. I dwell in contrition. I make a home in the yielded places, and I rebuild what others called useless. You don't need to look like everyone else, act like anyone else, or pray with rehearsed language. I just want the real you, the one beneath the masks, the one who's tired of pretending to be okay, the one who wonders if there'll ever be enough for someone like me. Let me answer that now you already are, not because of what you've done, but because of what I've done in your place. And that's why I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for trust, obedience, vulnerability, access. I can't heal what you hide, and I won't force myself into spaces you keep sealed. But if you'll open the door fully, if you'll stop trying to be strong for everyone else and finally admit that you need me more than you need to keep up appearances, then I will flood the places you thought would always remain dry. I'll restore what shame told you would never recover. I'll reignite the fire that fear tried to extinguish, and I'll release a strength that doesn't come from your striving. It comes from resting in my arms with nothing to prove. Child, lay it all down, not some of it, not pieces when it's convenient, but all of it. Even the parts you're scared to speak out loud, even the dreams you abandoned because failure hurt too much. I want your heart, not your performance. Your surrender is more powerful than your perfection ever could be. And when you truly let go, that's when the impossible begins to shift, because surrender creates access, and access allows me to move without restriction. Stop waiting to be more put together, more disciplined, more prepared. I'm not looking for preparation. I'm looking for permission. And right now, in this very moment, if you give it to me, I will do in seconds what you've been trying to accomplish for years. Just say yes, not from a place of striving, but from a place of surrender, and watch what I'll do with the life you thought was too complicated to use. There's been a constant hum surrounding your life: voices, screens, deadlines, conversations, expectations, responsibilities that together have created a storm of sound so thick it's dulled your ability to discern the urgency beneath it all. While you think you're functioning, while your hands are busy and your calendar is full, your spirit is quietly starving, unable to hear the alarms I've been sounding beneath the clutter. And the tragedy is not just that you're overwhelmed, it's that you've gotten used to being overwhelmed, numbed into believing that this chaos is normal, even acceptable. Child, you weren't created to live drowning in noise, racing through days with no space for me, no room for stillness, no pauses to hear my whispers, which, by now, have turned into urgent warnings. I've tried to interrupt through moments of silence that made you uncomfortable, through delays that frustrated you, through quiet nudges you brushed off, but the volume of everything else has grown so loud that even conviction sounds like static. You can't keep blaming your surroundings for your lack of clarity. The real issue isn't what's around you, it's what you've allowed access to your attention. Every scroll, every conversation not rooted in truth, every habit that fills the quiet instead of feeding your soul. They've formed a wall of distraction that keeps you from recognizing just how close the shift really is. You're asking me to speak, but I've been speaking. You just haven't been able to separate my voice from the crowd's. You think silence is uncomfortable, but it's in silence that I sharpen your ears, in stillness that I give you strategy, and in quietness that I reveal what noise keeps hidden. But now we've reached a moment where the alarm can't be subtle anymore. I'm not tapping gently. I'm ringing it with force, because what's ahead demands preparation, and preparation cannot happen if your mind is constantly consumed by what doesn't matter. Child, you've given fragments of your attention to everything but me, and I'm not competing with distractions. I'm confronting them, because the season we're entering won't allow divided focus. Too much depends on your ability to hear clearly, to move quickly, to discern purely, and you cannot do that when you're addicted to the buzz of what entertains but doesn't equip. Every day you delay reprioritizing, you drift further from the sensitivity I placed in you. And that sensitivity is your survival. It's how you'll recognize deception before it gets close, how you'll sense when to move and when to wait, how you'll know when something looks right but feels wrong. Without it, you'll be vulnerable to voices that sound holy but carry no truth, open to ideas that feel good but carry no assignment, pulled into environments that look fruitful but produce nothing eternal. And I cannot let that happen without warning you, because what's approaching isn't gentle, and only those rooted in my presence will stand firm when the shaking comes. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm revealing what noise is costing you: discernment, direction, depth. And if you don't reclaim your focus now, you'll look up and realize you've spent years building what I never asked for, following rhythms that drained you, chasing validation from systems I never told you to serve. But it's not too late if you'll step away from the noise. I will meet you in the quiet with precision, clarity, strategy, and presence. I'm calling you back to simplicity, not because you failed, but because you've strayed into a storm of busyness that has starved your inner life. Child, come back to the quiet, not to hide, but to hear, not to escape, but to be empowered. And when you do, I will recalibrate your ears to my frequency, restore the tenderness that once made you weep when I spoke, reignite the fire that routine tried to suffocate. But you must make the exchange. Trade the clamor for communion, the distraction for devotion, the noise for knowing me again. This is your invitation to hear the alarm clearly before the moment requires action. You're not prepared to take. Turn it all down now, because I've got something to say that will shift everything, but I won't shout over what you refuse to silence. You keep wondering why certain people faded, why doors you once celebrated slammed shut without explanation, why places that used to feel like home now carry discomfort, and why opportunities that once looked promising dissolved before your eyes. And I need you to understand, none of that was random. I removed them, not out of cruelty, but out of mercy, because I saw what you couldn't. I discerned what you didn't perceive, and I intervened before your attachment to temporary things compromised what I had prepared for your eternal impact. You thought you were being punished, abandoned, overlooked, but the reality is, I was protecting you from alignments that looked safe but were silently stealing your strength, routines that felt secure but were limiting your capacity, connections that appeared beneficial but were rooted in manipulation and distraction. Child, I will not compete with idols in your life, not idols made of stone, but one shaped in comfort, routine, validation, reputation, and the illusion of control. When I saw you clinging to what no longer served your purpose, I stepped in and allowed the removal, not to punish, but to position, because your future required space that clutter would never allow. And though you grieved what left, what disappeared, what unraveled, I was near, closer than ever, whispering through every closed chapter. This is me, creating room for what's next. The silence after the stripping was sacred. I wasn't distant. I was drawing you into dependence, into focus, into stillness where my voice could reach parts of you that noise always drowned. I removed things not to leave you empty, but to make space for the fullness I'm preparing, for the clarity I'm revealing, for the oil I'm about to pour. But I couldn't pour new if you kept holding on to what had expired. And yes, I saw your disappointment, the tears you never showed, the confusion you wrestled with alone. But even in that pain I was working, untying soul ties, dissolving distractions, dismantling false security systems built on things never intended to carry your calling. You've been trying to make sense of the loss. But I'm telling you now, it wasn't subtraction. It was alignment. And until you see what left through the lens of my love, you'll keep trying to chase what I deliberately pulled you from. I allowed the detour to save your destiny, permitted the pause to reset your pace, orchestrated the separation to restore your sight, because I know what's coming, and I know who can walk with you into the next season and who can't. And it's not rejection. It's redirection, holy severance that creates space for what's been waiting for your surrender. I've removed not only people and plans, but also pieces of your identity that were never part of my design, labels you wore for too long, roles you assumed to gain approval, expectations that buried your true voice. And now, though it feels like loss, it's actually liberation. Child, I didn't take from you, I stripped away what hindered you, what limited your access, what delayed your release into the life I crafted before you were ever formed. And I know it felt sudden, even cruel at times, but I assure you there was nothing random about it. I was strategic, intentional, precise, because your growth demanded space, and your next level required pruning. And now, as you stand in this uncomfortable stretch between what was and what will be, I want you to know this. I've never been closer, and this emptiness you feel isn't abandonment, it's preparation. It's the space where new oil will flow, where greater fire will fall, where purpose will bloom in soil freshly cleared of weeds you didn't even know were choking your roots. So stop mourning what I removed, begin thanking me for what I'm making room for, because your readiness required this kind of separation. Your influence demanded this kind of cleansing, and your calling could no longer be delayed by what was draining you. The absence you feel is the stage I've cleared so that my glory can rest on you without interference, without dilution, without distraction. Don't try to go back. Don't try to fix what I've already finished. Don't try to chase what I've released you from. Let go completely, and watch what I do with the space you finally surrendered. What's coming next needed room, and now, child, you're almost ready. You've whispered through clenched hands and tear-filled prayers, Lord, I'm waiting for you. As though I were the one behind the delay, as if I were withholding movement, keeping answers locked behind unseen walls. But child, what you call waiting has often been me watching you hesitate, waiting on your obedience, waiting on your surrender, waiting on your decision to stop postponing the very thing you asked me to do. I've already given the instruction, released the word, opened the door, stirred your heart, arranged the timing, but instead of stepping forward, you circled the moment, questioned the cost, retreated behind doubt, while still convincing yourself you're standing still out of faith, when in truth, it's been fear dressed as reverence, hesitation wrapped in spiritual language, delay justified with reasoning that sounds noble but keeps you paralyzed. And all the while, I've been waiting for your yes to be complete, not partial, waiting for movement, not emotional reaction, waiting for a response that doesn't rely on clarity but trusts the weight of what I've already spoken. You think I'm holding back, but I've already released the wind. You're just anchored to the shore, afraid to raise your sail and let it carry you. I've gone ahead, but you stayed behind, hoping I'll return to where you're comfortable instead of following me into the place where growth demands risk and transformation requires obedience before understanding. Child, the delay hasn't been mine, it's lived in your decisions, in the cycle of overthinking, in the constant need for reassurance after I've already confirmed. How many signs do you need before you act? How many confirmations must I send before you believe what you already know deep within your spirit? You've asked for more evidence, but your spirit has already agreed with me. Your feet are what need to follow. I've waded through your questions, stayed through your uncertainty, endured your inconsistency, not because I'm powerless to act without you, but because I refuse to override your will. I want your cooperation, not your compulsion. And yes, I could force the breakthrough, but I won't. I'm inviting you into partnership, into the kind of faith that doesn't need another word to move, the kind that believes I'm still ahead even when the map looks unfinished. You keep thinking I'm distant, but it's not distance, it's alignment. It's me standing in the place I told you to meet me, still waiting, still hoping you'll trust me enough to come. I've never left the promise. I'm still where the last instruction pointed, still holding the next piece you've been praying for, still ready to pour out what your heart has longed for, but it's waiting on the version of you that's done hesitating. You keep calling it a waiting season. But the truth is, I've been waiting for the moment you finally believe that what I've placed inside of you is enough to begin. You keep asking me to move mountains, but I'm asking you to move your feet, to shift your posture, to raise your voice, to take the step you've been rehearsing in your mind for months but never initiated. Child, delay carries consequences, not because I punish it, but because purpose isn't stagnant, it flows. And when you stand still too long, you lose sight of what you were supposed to be catching. I won't stop loving you, but I can't bless disobedience, and partial obedience is still resistance dressed politely. I'm calling you now, not in anger, but with urgency, because the door I opened is time-sensitive. The opportunity I've set in place is not eternal, and the harvest I've prepared is waiting on your willingness to leave behind the mindset that keeps calling hesitation wisdom. I'm still here, but I won't remain in the same place forever. My glory moves, my plans advance, and I want you to move with me, not chase me later in regret. Don't let another day pass thinking you're waiting on me while I'm standing with outstretched hands saying, "Child, I've already started. Where are you?" This is the hour to realize I've never been slow. You've just been still in the wrong place. And it's time to rise and walk into the future that's already been written but still requires your yes. What you cannot yet perceive is how thin the veil has become between what you've been praying for and what's about to manifest. There is a shift poised to unfold that will alter the course of your entire path, and it's not in the distance, it's at the edge of this very moment, waiting for your full engagement, for your inner agreement, for your complete alignment. And the weight of what's coming is too significant for hesitation to continue being your response. Child, the transition is not theoretical, it's already in motion, but it requires your movement to intersect with what I've ordained. What you've been calling preparation has in fact matured into readiness, but you keep looking for one more assurance, one more sign, one more perfect circumstance before you act. Yet all the while, destiny is unfolding like a sunrise, whether or not you're awake enough to see it. And I cannot allow you to sleep through this awakening, to drift through what should be your crossing, to miss the timing because you were distracted by timing itself. There is an acceleration in the spirit that is bypassing those who remain neutral, and you were never created to live in neutrality. You were designed for radical obedience, for holy disruption, for timely responses that don't wait for full understanding before they follow me. I've already sounded the signal within you. I've already placed the stirring deep in your core, and the trembling you feel is not anxiety, it's your spirit recognizing that the hour has come to shift from waiting to walking, from processing to possessing, from pondering to proclaiming. You don't see it yet, but the pieces have already begun to converge. Relationships are being repositioned, resources are being redirected, opportunities are being released. But if you delay again, what was meant to be a divine collision may pass right by because it requires your presence, not just your desire. The doors I'm opening aren't waiting for applause, they're waiting for access. And access comes from obedience, not contemplation. Child, the window is sacred, not eternal. It will not remain open while you calculate every possible outcome. This shift doesn't need your logic. It needs your trust. And trust is only real when it's activated before comfort shows up. You've been prepared more than you realize, refined in ways you didn't recognize, molded through fire that burned off what couldn't follow you into what's next. But now the fire has finished its work, and it's time to step through the smoke into the territory that's already been cleared for your arrival. And yes, there will still be battles, but they will be battles you're graced to win, and victory will meet your footsteps, not your hesitation. What's on the other side of this shift is what your tears have been building toward, what your silence has been training for, what your wilderness has been preparing to release. But none of it will reach your hands if your feet stay still. I am telling you now, with divine urgency, that hesitation will cost you more in this hour than it ever has before, not because I'm angry, but because the hour is weighty, and the field is right, and the moment will not be held back for convenience. There is a change forming around you, not in theory, but in movement, spiritual alignments clicking into place, unseen forces rearranging in your favor, breakthroughs being assigned with your name. But if you fail to move, they cannot rest upon what is passive. The blessing cannot attach to what won't respond, and the mantle I've fashioned for you cannot fall on empty shoulders. Child, it's closer than it's ever been, closer than your fear, closer than your doubts, closer than the resistance that has tried to slow you down. And if you could only see what's waiting on the other side of your yes, you wouldn't waste another moment hesitating. You'd run, you'd fall to your knees, you'd shout your surrender, because the shift you've been waiting for is already here. But I'm waiting to see if you'll rise to meet it or retreat behind the same reasons that kept you bound last season. I've given you every tool, every answer, every grace needed for this step now, child. Take it before the shift passes and leaves you wondering what could have been if only you moved when the moment called. Before the foundation of the world, your purpose was crafted with intentionality, and your name was etched into a storyline so much larger than your current view. What I designed for you was not casual or optional. It was authored with precision, with timing, with significance that cannot be replaced by another. And now, the chapter meant to carry your impact is ready to begin, but it cannot be written until you step through the threshold I've placed before you. Your assignment is not suspended in uncertainty, it's active, waiting for activation. And while you've been questioning whether you belong in what's coming next, I've already positioned you as a central part of what I'm doing in this generation. The delay hasn't erased your calling, it's just paused the unfolding, and the only thing required now is movement. Child, your name is not a footnote, not a side mention, not an afterthought. It's written boldly in the plans I've been preparing, but the pages won't turn themselves. This next chapter is voice-activated, faith-driven, obedience-powered, and until you respond, it remains sealed. You've been asking for the breakthrough, but the breakthrough was waiting for your agreement, and now the spotlight is shifting to the ones who are willing, not just the ones who are visible. I'm not looking for titles, I'm looking for vessels. I'm not impressed by credentials, I'm searching for surrendered hearts that don't wait for applause to move, but obey because they recognize the weight of what's been written with their name on it. And child, the anointing I've placed upon you cannot be copied, cannot be transferred, cannot be duplicated. It's specific to your journey, unique to your wounds, tailored to your refinement, and it's been preserved for such a time as this. You've endured storms not just to survive, but to carry authority over the very things that tried to break you. And that authority is needed now, not next year, not one day now. The atmosphere is shifting, and there are assignments being unlocked for those who are willing to step into unfamiliar territory without waiting for every detail to be clear. You don't need to feel ready, you need to be available, because I will fill what you offer. I will anoint what you surrender. I will equip what you place in my hands. And your name has not been forgotten in heaven. In fact, it's being spoken even now in rooms you haven't entered, in conversations you're not yet aware of, in places you thought were inaccessible. But access is not granted by man, it is established by my authority. And what I open, no one can shut, and where I send you, no one can block. The chapter that carries your greatest influence is not behind you, it's just ahead. But it will only be live if you turn the page. Child, don't let fear convince you to reread what I've already closed, to revisit seasons I've called you out of, to repeat patterns I've already broken. The comfort of the past will never sustain the demands of the future, and what's waiting requires the version of you that's been hidden long enough. It's time to emerge, to rise, to walk with conviction, to speak what I've placed inside of you without apology, to carry light into places that have grown dim because others were too afraid to step in. Your yes is not just a personal response, it's a domino that activates destinies around you. And if you refuse to rise, others remain stuck, waiting for the signal your movement will release. I have already assigned angels to walk with you, cleared barriers you haven't yet encountered, and positioned provision along the way, but none of it will manifest until you say yes in a way that costs you your comfort, your silence, your excuses. This is not about performance, it's about posture, and the posture I need now is availability. I've written your name into what's coming, but I will not drag you into destiny. I will invite you, and now, I am inviting you again, not just to dream, but to do, not just to believe, but to build, not just to imagine, but to embody what I spoke over your life before you ever took your first breath. Child, turn the page, your name is already on it. You've convinced yourself that too much has happened, that the distance between who you've become and who you were created to be is too wide to cross, but I need you to understand this clearly. You are not disqualified, you are not discarded, and you are not beyond restoration. Even in your silence, I've been watching with compassion, not condemnation, waiting, not withholding. I've seen the detours you didn't plan, the decisions you wish you could undo, the slow unraveling that made you feel unworthy to return, and yet my arms remain open, not because your efforts earned it, but because my love has never changed. Child, I don't measure your potential by your past, I measure it by what I planted in you before your first failure ever occurred, and that seed is still intact, still viable, still capable of producing what I designed it to become. But while grace remains available, I must also speak plainly. Grace is not a license to wander forever, and mercy does not erase the consequences of continued resistance. You are not too far gone, but the window of easy return is not eternal. The longer you delay, the more layers build up around your heart, the more normalized compromise becomes, the more dulled your spiritual sensitivity grows, the more embedded the habits become that were only meant to test your discernment, not define your lifestyle. And if you keep flirting with delay, you will find yourself drifting into indifference without realizing it, still speaking my name but no longer moved by it, still attending places of worship but no longer encountering my presence, still claiming hope but secretly resigned to despair. That's what the enemy wants, to wear you down, not with a single fall, but with a series of slow fades, until you begin to believe that returning is pointless, that your assignment has been passed on, that your voice no longer carries weight. But I have not signed off on that lie. I have not transferred your mantle. I have not erased your name from the plan. I have not closed the gate behind you. I am still calling, still drawing, still longing to redeem what's been lost. But child, I need your return to be now, not later, because the timing of your obedience affects more than just your journey. It impacts those attached to your breakthrough, those whose release is connected to your rising, those who are waiting for your light to reach them through the very story you've been ashamed of. I do not waste wounds. I do not discard broken vessels. I remake them into instruments of glory, into beacons of deliverance, into walking evidence of my power. But time is not waiting while you decide if you're ready. It keeps moving, and purpose keeps unfolding, and the hour is pressing for those who will respond without waiting for conditions to be perfect. If you felt like the doors are closing, it's not because I'm shutting you out, it's because I'm pressing you to walk through before the season shifts and what was once easily accessible becomes harder to find. Not because I want to punish, but because moments are sacred, and what you do with this moment determines how much I can release in the next. You are still chosen, but chosen people still have to choose. Choose me over delay, truth over denial, obedience over self-preservation. The window is still open, but the weight of this moment requires clarity. You cannot afford to drift one more day, to numb yourself with noise one more night, to let another opportunity pass thinking I'll repeat this same invitation again and again. I've come close, not just to comfort you, but to confront what's trying to keep you from stepping in. And this is your wake-up call, not to shame you, but to shake you into awareness. You're not too far, but if you wait too long, the cost of return becomes heavier. Not because I move away, but because your heart builds walls with every day you delay. Come now, while your spirit still feels the pull, while your heart still recognizes the sound of my voice, while the tears still have meaning, because this moment is mercy, and mercy is knocking loudly. There is a sound in the spirit that few can hear unless they are listening closely, a subtle fracture in the atmosphere, a signal that the grace to delay is quickly coming to an end. This isn't fear I'm speaking from, it's warning, and the difference between the two is everything. Fear paralyzes, but warning liberates when heeded. Child, the window through which my invitation has been extended is no longer wide open, it's narrowing, and though I've been patient, merciful, long-suffering in my pursuit of your full surrender, the timeline tied to this moment cannot be held open indefinitely. There are divine assignments I've timed with precision, alignments scheduled to arrive only if you're in position, doors that respond not to potential, but to presence, and if you do not enter now, they will not remain accessible simply because you intended to walk through later. Intentions do not activate fulfillment, obedience does, and I see how you've been torn, pulled between what feels secure and what I've asked you to risk, stuck in that dangerous space between comfort and calling. But I tell you now, the sound of the hinge tightening, the creak of closing opportunity, is already echoing in the spirit realm, and I will not allow the compromise of timing to ruin the momentum I've set in motion. I will not let what was meant to be a launch be turned into another season of circling due to delay disguised as discernment. You are running out of the luxury to keep deciding, to keep analyzing, to keep asking questions I've already answered in your spirit. The resistance you're feeling is not me, it's the pressure of divine timing trying to carry you forward, but you're holding back, hoping I'll wait longer, hoping I'll slow down to accommodate your fear. But child, I can't slow what heaven has scheduled. I can't postpone what others are waiting to receive through your obedience. You keep asking me to give you more time, but time is not yours to manage. It's a resource entrusted to you, not something you control, and right now, it's being spent whether you use it or not. And I must speak plainly now. If you continue to hesitate, you will not just miss a moment, you will miss a movement, something so much bigger than what you thought was at stake. This isn't just about your personal breakthrough, it's about a ripple effect, about lives being rearranged through your yes, about chains breaking in places you've never seen because of decisions you were assigned to make in faith. The weight of what's connected to this season cannot be overstated, and that's why the window is narrowing, not to punish, but to protect what's sacred from being handled with casual hesitation. I cannot let delayed obedience spoil the fruit of what I've prepared, so I'm pressing you not out of anger, but out of fierce love, because I see the impact your obedience will unlock, and I refuse to watch it go dormant because of your indecision. Child, listen closely, this window will not remain open forever, and when it shuts, it will not reopen in the same way, with the same people, under the same conditions, and I don't want you to live in regret, wondering what could have happened if you had stepped forward when I first called. I want you to move now, while the grace is fresh, while the way is still clear, while the Spirit is still tugging, because once it shuts, striving cannot reopen it, pleading will not recreate it, and time will have moved on to new assignments. I will still love you, but I will not reroute destiny to chase indecision. So this is your moment. Recognize the sound of the window cracking before it slams shut, and move before silence replaces the invitation. Step forward not because you feel ready, but because readiness is found on the other side of obedience. Child, I'm still calling, but the call won't echo forever. You're standing in a moment drenched in mercy, surrounded by a grace that has covered more than you realize, shielding you from consequences, shielding you from unseen warfare, shielding you from yourself. I've held back what should have overtaken you, not because you earned it, but because my love is relentless and my patience has covered your wavering without demanding repayment. I've softened the impact of decisions that could have unraveled everything. I've blocked arrows you didn't know were aimed at your future, and I've extended lifelines again and again, even when your hands remain still. And yet, I must tell you the truth that many are afraid to speak. Mercy is not infinite in its offering. It is holy, but it is time-bound, it is purposeful, not passive. And while my heart is full of compassion, I will not allow mercy to become a substitute for transformation. I've poured out favor even when your alignment was off, hoping it would draw you back to me. But the purpose of mercy is not to make you comfortable in delay, it's to awaken you to the urgency of surrender. And I've watched how you've tasted kindness and called it a sign that everything was fine, even though I was using that kindness to bring you to repentance, to stir conviction, not to confirm that delay was acceptable. Mercy is not me tolerating your pace, it's me inviting you to recognize that I've given you space to turn, and that space is not promised to last. Child, this moment is drenched in opportunity, but it's also sacred, and sacred spaces are not meant to be treated casually. If you continue to misuse mercy as a buffer between you and obedience, the cushion you've relied on will eventually disappear, not because I withdraw love, but because I honor seasons, and this season is shifting fast. I am calling you now while the oil is still flowing, while access is still open, while the invitation remains warm in my hand. But if you wait until the moment of crisis, the mercy you've depended on may no longer be accessible in the way it is now, not because I change, but because patterns of delay always lead to hardened hearts, and hardened hearts can no longer hear me clearly. Even when I shout, I want to spare you from that numbness, from that drifting, from that dullness of spirit where conviction no longer pierces. That's why I've allowed disappointment, why I've stirred restlessness, why I've blocked auctions you thought would bring ease. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection wrapped in love that refused to let you slip into permanent distance. My child, mercy is still flowing, But it was never meant to be abused, it's meant to change you. And if it doesn't move you to action, it will eventually feel like silence, not because I stopped speaking, but because your spirit became too used to standing at the edge of decision and never crossing over. I've sent voices. I've opened scripture in moments where the words seemed to leap off the page. I've prompted strangers to speak what I've been trying to get you to hear for months. But what I cannot do is override your will. I can knock. I can pursue. I can weep over your hesitation, but I cannot force you to respond. And I won't turn mercy into manipulation. I want your yes to be authentic, not forced, child. I say this with the deepest tenderness. The time to take me seriously is now. You cannot keep expecting second chances to be limitless. You cannot keep walking to the edge of the fire, expecting grace to always be waiting to pull you back. I've caught you more times than you've counted, but that does not mean the safety net will remain forever. Mercy is costly. It came at the price of my blood, and I will not allow it to be treated like background noise in your story. You've been given more grace than most ever see, and that is not a reason to delay. It is a reason to fall on your face and thank me with a surrendered life. The invitation is still open, but not for long, and I'm asking you to walk through it while it's still available, not later, not when you feel more worthy, not once you've cleaned yourself up. Now, while mercy still flows freely like an open river waiting to carry you into destiny. You've grown so used to cycles that you stopped realizing they are cages, motions that feel normal, decisions that seem minor, thoughts you assume are harmless, but all of them layered together have formed a rhythm that's slowly pulling you away from who I created you to become. It didn't start as rebellion. It started as survival, a way to feel safe, a way to maintain some sense of control. But now that rhythm is turning into a chain, and I will not stand by and watch it harden into your identity. You were never meant to keep spinning in the same direction, visiting the same fears, feeding the same doubts, obeying the same voice that tells you to wait one more day, to avoid one more confrontation with truth, to bury one more moment of conviction. Child, what you've been calling your routine is actually resistance disguised as comfort. And I need to break in, not because I'm angry, but because I love you too much to let your own patterns become your prison. The enemy doesn't always attack with disaster. Sometimes he just repeats distractions until you stop noticing that you're no longer moving. And I see how you settled for cycles instead of victory, how you've started calling stagnation stability, how you've learned to function with low expectations because it feels safer than stepping into uncertainty. But that kind of safety is spiritual starvation, and I cannot allow you to continue choosing survival when I've destined you for authority. What you think is protecting you is actually stunting your growth, and if I don't interrupt it now, you'll start forgetting what freedom ever felt like. And so I'm interrupting, not gently, not softly, but with force, because the longer you delay, the more dangerous this rhythm becomes, and it's not just affecting your calling, it's bleeding into your relationships, your decisions, your clarity, your energy. You're tired not because you're doing too much, but because you're out of sync with what I designed you to walk in. You're frustrated not because doors are closed, but because you keep knocking on ones I've already told you to leave behind. And while you try to rationalize this routine, heaven is grieving the moments you've surrendered to cycles that were never meant to hold you this long. Child, I didn't save you for repetition. I saved you for transformation, and transformation requires disruption. It means I will break the pattern, even if it costs you comfort, even if it offends your plans, even if it stretches you beyond what you thought you could bear, because I will not allow what's been tolerated to become permanent when you were made for more than maintenance. I know you're scared of change, scared of losing what's familiar, scared of the unknown. But the unknown is where I do my greatest work, where I show you what I can do with a surrendered yes, not a rehearsed excuse. And I see the inner conflict, the part of you that longs for freedom and the part of you that clings to what's familiar. But I am standing in the middle of that tension, not to condemn you, but to call you out of it once and for all. The longer you stay where you are, the more you risk losing sensitivity to what I'm saying, and eventually, you won't even hear me interrupting. You'll start calling bondage your identity and begin defending the very pattern that's been keeping you bound. Child, I love you too much to let that happen. So yes, I am interrupting, even violently if necessary, not because I'm distant, but because I'm closer than you've ever felt me, shouting over the noise you've gotten used to, reaching past the walls you thought were protective but are actually suffocating you slowly. And this moment, right now, is the interruption you've prayed for without realizing it. The moment where I break the loop and give you a door out of what's been draining your purpose. But you must walk through, not later, not when you feel ready, not after the pattern plays out one more time. Now, while my hand is reaching, while my voice is loud, while the Spirit is stirring, I'm not just interrupting your life. I'm rescuing it from a cycle that was never meant to define you. I see it. The flicker inside you that once roared like a wildfire, now reduced to barely a pulse. The passion that used to stir tears in your eyes has dulled to routine, and the hunger that once drove you to your knees has faded into silence. You didn't mean to grow cold. You didn't plan to disconnect. But every time you postponed obedience, something sacred grew quieter, and now you're walking through days feeling distant from me, not because I've moved, but because repeated hesitation has worn down your sensitivity. Child, it's not sin alone that erodes fire. It's delay, not just outright rebellion, but small deferrals, postponed surrenders, quiet negotiations with truth that pile up like layers of dust on your spirit until the flame within you feels buried beneath questions, distractions, and fatigue. And I need you to hear me clearly. I have not forgotten the fire I placed in you. I have not removed your assignment. I have not changed my mind about your voice, your calling, or your impact. What you feel now is not final. It's the result of lingering too long on the edges of commitment, waiting for perfect timing, perfect conditions, perfect confidence before fully diving in. But fire doesn't wait for clarity. It responds to oxygen. And I am here now breathing fresh wind into what you thought was extinguished. The numbness you feel isn't proof of failure. It's the symptom of spiritual distance. And I am closing that distance right now with this word. I haven't come to shame you. I've come to reignite what's been dormant, to call forth the buried embers and command them to burn again, not just with memory, but with fresh revelation. I've seen you go through the motions, show up physically while mentally checked out, offer praise with your mouth while your heart quietly questioned if I still had more for you. And I'm telling you, I do. I have more oil, more purpose, more intimacy, more depth. But you must acknowledge that numbness doesn't heal through waiting. It breaks through pursuit. You cannot wait your way out of spiritual dullness. You must run back into the flame, even if it means trembling, even if it means confessing how far you've drifted, even if it means laying down pride and starting from the ground again. I don't need you to fake passion. I want your honesty, because honesty is flammable, and when laid before me, I turn even ashes into altars. Child, this numbness is not permanent. It's a signal, a divine alarm reminding you that your spirit was never meant to live on autopilot. I created you for burning, for glowing with glory, for carrying heat that shakes atmospheres and sets captives free. And though the layers of delay have thickened, they are not stronger than my breath. I can blow through the dust in a moment if you let me, and you don't have to find your way back alone. I am the path. I am the fire starter. I am the spark you can no longer create by yourself. I know how exhaustion crept in, how disappointment lowered your expectations, how repeated postponement became the strategy to avoid the pain of obedience. But I'm telling you now, numbness is not your inheritance. You were never meant to survive on spiritual fumes, never meant to blend into apathy, never created to be lukewarm in the middle of a war that demands your fire. And I know this sounds urgent because it is. The longer you allow the numbness to settle, the harder it becomes to tell the difference between peace and detachment, between stillness and stagnation, between wisdom and fear. That's why I'm confronting it now, not to crush you, but to restore you. I'm standing in front of you with matchless mercy and an open flame, waiting for your yes to make contact with my power. And when it does, what felt lost will return with force, what felt dim will blaze again with clarity, and what you thought had died will rise with fire on its tongue. Don't settle for numb. Reach for me now, and I will set you ablaze again. You keep waiting for a signal that the conflict is about to begin, not realizing you're already standing in the middle of it, already surrounded by forces working to drain your clarity, already targeted by unseen resistance that doesn't show itself with loud destruction but with subtle erosion. Child, the war has been underway for longer than you know. It didn't start with a sudden collapse or visible chaos. It started when you began to normalize spiritual passivity, when you stopped guarding your peace, when you let prayer become a reaction instead of a lifestyle. This isn't preparation time. This is confrontation time, and pretending you're still getting ready is a lie the enemy wants you to keep repeating so he can keep gaining ground while you wait for a sign that already passed. This battle doesn't look like what you imagined. It's not always storms or disasters. Sometimes it's fatigue that won't break, a fog that won't lift, a numbness that lingers, a heaviness that settles without cause, and all of it is designed to silence your voice, mute your discernment, and distract your spirit from the urgency of now. This war isn't fought in the natural, it's spiritual, and its most dangerous weapons are not catastrophe, but compromise, complacency, and comfort. I didn't place you here to live in reaction. I placed you to carry atmosphere-shifting authority, to speak with weight, to recognize the difference between surface attacks and core-level sabotage. But if you don't wake up to the fact that the battle is active, you'll keep treating divine strategy like a suggestion instead of a survival manual, and I haven't left you unequipped. I've given you weapons that do not dull, truth that doesn't decay, armor that cannot be pierced when worn correctly. But they do nothing if left unused, if kept in theory but never activated through action. This is not the hour to hope things calm down. This is the moment to rise and push back, to stop dancing around decisions and start standing in your full authority. Child, I have not called you to be intimidated. I've anointed you to be unshakable, but you cannot walk in what you don't recognize, and right now the greatest deception isn't that the enemy is strong. It's that you've forgotten how strong I've made you when you stand in alignment with me. You keep asking for peace, but peace isn't always the absence of pressure. It's the presence of power in the middle of chaos. The kind of peace I give doesn't remove you from warfare. It anchors you while the battle rages. You're asking me to remove things I've trained you to conquer, asking me to take away resistance I've allowed so that your spiritual muscles could grow into maturity, so that you would stop underestimating the mantle I placed on you before your birth. You weren't made to run from hard seasons. You were made to shift them, to prophecy over them, to cast out confusion instead of living with it like a tenant. Child, I've equipped you not just to survive, but to reclaim, to restore, to rebuild what darkness tried to tear down. But it begins with awakening to the reality that this is not a drill, and you are not on standby. This moment is real. The warfare is active, the atmosphere is shifting, and you are not a bystander. You are a soldier, a carrier of glory, a gatekeeper of divine influence in the spaces I've assigned to you. Don't let delay disguise itself as preparation any longer. The tools are in your hands. The battle has already arrived, and the only thing that remains is whether you'll step fully into the fight or keep waiting for peace in a war zone designed to train you, not destroy you. I am with you, not just as comfort, but as commander, and I'm issuing the call now. Lift your head, plant your feet, and take your place. This isn't just defense anymore. It's time to advance. Everything you've walked through, every painful delay, every spiritual wrestle, every quiet night where you questioned your place in the story was not wasted. It was preparation, groundwork laid in secret for a moment such as this. I have not been distant. I have been developing you in places where applause never echoed and recognition never came, because strength forged in hiddenness is strength that doesn't collapse under pressure. Child, while you thought you were being overlooked, I was refining your character, stretching your faith, teaching your heart how to remain anchored when emotions shift and surroundings change. And now, the season that once shaped you must be left behind so you can rise into the one you've been shaped for. This isn't about hype. It's about readiness. I'm not speaking to your comfort, I'm speaking to your calling, the assignment that's been pulsing underneath your surface for far too long. What you've labeled not yet has already been marked go in heaven, and the only thing left is for you to walk into it, not with hesitation, but with boldness that comes from knowing you've already been prepared. I didn't allow storms to crush you, I used them to sharpen your discernment. I didn't let delays derail you, I used them to teach you the power of stillness. I didn't forget you in the process. I was forming in you a foundation that can hold what's about to be placed on your shoulders. And now I say clearly, it's time to take your place, not tomorrow, not when you feel more qualified, but now, because this moment does not demand perfection. It demands obedience. I don't need you to understand everything. I need you to trust what I've been building inside you. The endurance that's stronger than before. The insight that's clearer than it's ever been. The authority that was carved through every trial you thought would break you but only brought you closer to me. And child, hear me clearly. Nothing you've endured has been in vain. Nothing you survived was wasted. The tears, the prayers, the inner battles no one else witnessed, they were all part of the equipping. And now what once looked like broken pieces will become weapons of breakthrough. Your scars are not signs of defeat, they are markers of victory, evidence that you've made it through fire and still carry faith. And I'm not just calling you forward, I'm confirming what your spirit has been feeling, even when your mind tried to silence it. The tug in your chest, the weight on your heart, the holy unrest that won't go away, that is me, pushing you toward destiny you can no longer ignore. Don't let insecurity talk you out of what I've been preparing you for, because the mantle fits, the timing is right, and your hesitation will only delay what's already been ordained. This is the hour where my spirit is moving through the ones who have been hidden, the ones who didn't quit when no one was watching, the ones who kept walking when it felt like they were walking alone. And child, you are one of them. You are not forgotten, not overlooked, not a background character in someone else's narrative. You are central to what I am doing right now, in this very generation, and your voice, your presence, your obedience carries ripple effects far greater than what you can currently perceive. Don't let fear make decisions that belong to faith. Don't let waiting become a permanent posture when I've called you to walk. I am clearing the way, but I need your agreement, your movement, your full surrender, not as a concept, but as a lifestyle. This moment is not just about breakthrough, it's about becoming everything I've seen in you since the beginning, before the pain, before the confusion, before the delay. I saw this day coming, and I've been preparing you for it, not with spotlights, but with silence, not with shortcuts, but with fire. And now, what I've built inside you must be released, not tomorrow, not when you feel brave, but now. The hour is ripe, and your place in it is no accident. Rise up, child, this is what you were trained for. If everything around you feels like it's unraveling, it's not because you're forsaken, it's because you're on the verge of unveiling something the darkness has feared would ever emerge. Don't mistake the chaos as a sign of defeat. Child, recognize it as confirmation that your destiny is making noise in the invisible realm. The shaking you feel is not destruction, it's alignment. The pressure around your soul isn't punishment, it's birthing. The warfare surrounding your days is not meant to destroy your spirit, but to awaken the fire that's been tucked beneath your doubt, your exhaustion, your silence. The louder the resistance, the greater the release that's being prepared for you. Every unseen confrontation in your mind, every invisible tension in your atmosphere, every moment you felt pushed to your limit, it's not random, it's targeted, because hell only intensifies its attacks on what heaven has anointed. I need you to stop interpreting resistance as rejection and start viewing it as proof that you're carrying something that can't be stopped if you stay close to me. The moment you said yes, even in your heart, even with trembling, something shifted, and now the unseen world is responding, because your yes carries weight in the spirit. There are forces that hoped you would stay asleep in your complacency, that you'd get comfortable in survival and never walk into your full fire. But here you are, hearing me, standing on the edge of breakthrough, and the enemy is terrified, not of your personality, not of your story, but of your surrender, your decision to keep walking, even limping, toward the voice that has never stopped calling your name. Understand this clearly, child, when my mark is on you, distraction multiplies, detours increase, and confusion tries to flood your focus. But I have given you discernment that cuts through fog, and I am strengthening your backbone for what's coming next. No more shrinking, no more second guessing, no more watering down who you are to fit into spaces I never sent you to. You weren't designed for the background, I created you for divine disruption. This is why the friction's been so strong, it's because you're a threat to systems that thrive on silence, and you carry a message that will unlock captives who have been stuck where you used to be. Your liberation was never just about you, it was always about others connected to your obedience. That's why you've been opposed so harshly in moments when you tried to rise. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're potent. And now, you must make a decision not based on what's comfortable, but on what's right. Will you fold under pressure or rise through purpose? Will you collapse under fire or walk through it refined? Because I'm not calling you to survive this, I'm calling you to roar through it. The crown I've set aside for you cannot be worn by the hesitant or the easily swayed. It belongs to the one who chooses me above all else, even when it costs reputation, relationships, or routine. I've seen what you've endured in silence, and I am not unjust to forget the cost of your continued yes. And even now, angels are being dispatched on your behalf, because your decision to keep holding on has activated a wave of divine response. Nothing formed against you can succeed when your allegiance is anchored in me. The shaking you feel is the sound of systems falling apart so that kingdom can rise in your life. I'm removing dependencies that once dulled your discernment and replacing them with clarity so sharp, you'll never again question what is of me and what is counterfeit. Lean into me now, press past the noise, past the fear, past the urge to retreat, and you will feel the weight of my hand lifting burdens, breaking barriers, and clearing the path I've already written for you. This moment isn't about looking strong, it's about being positioned for victory, even while still healing. I'm with you, surrounding you, going ahead of you, and the intensity of the battle only confirms the magnitude of the purpose that's about to unfold through you. Child, what you've been interpreting as delay has never meant I forgot you. It's not that I've ignored your cries or silenced my promises. It's that I'm refining the timing so what I give will not collapse under pressure. There are things you've asked for that required me to rearrange situations beyond your sight, to protect you from stepping into spaces that looked right but would have swallowed you whole. If I had handed it to you when you begged, it would have cost you your peace, your alignment, your voice. And I love you too much to let you walk unguarded into something that appears beautiful but bleeds you dry. I need you to understand that I'm not trying to punish you through postponement. I'm preparing something that won't need to be repaired because it will arrive complete. While you wait, I'm not passive. I'm deeply involved, orchestrating things you would never believe if you saw the blueprints, shifting atmospheres, bending hearts, softening opposition, building bridges in realms your feet haven't touched yet. You keep looking at the surface, the closed doors, the silent rooms, the unanswered prayers. But I see the landscape from above, and I will not allow you to settle in premature victories or counterfeit comforts. My ways are not bound by your clock. My deliverance doesn't run on your calendar. It moves in perfection, and perfection takes precision, not speed. Stop comparing your timeline to others who seem ahead. They are not the benchmark. I am. Some are running on fast tracks that will eventually lead to sudden breakdowns. But I'm placing you on a path that will hold, even when storms slam against it. I know you feel like you've been in the same place too long, but the depth I'm establishing in you will make you immovable when you arrive at the next level. Don't confuse stillness with stagnation. Your roots are going deep, and when the fruit appears, it will be abundant and undeniable. Every minute you thought was wasted is actually watering unseen growth. I know you've cried in the waiting, questioned everything, wondered if you were being overlooked. But if you could see what I'm shielding you from, you would fall to your knees and thank me for the wait. The longer I hold you here, the stronger you'll walk when it breaks open. Trust me, child. What I'm about to place in your hands won't need constant fixing, because it will be molded through wisdom, secured by discernment, and released with my breath on it. The tension you feel right now, that ache of wanting to move forward but being held back, is not punishment. It's restraint birthed in mercy. I am not trying to frustrate you. I'm trying to fortify you. So when the gate swings open, you'll have stamina to run and strength to carry what comes with it. Some prayers require more than faith. They require maturity. And maturity is only developed through delays that feel unfair. You are maturing in silence, growing in private, being prepared in hiddenness, because public promise requires personal preparation. When I finally say now, nothing will be able to stop what I've set in motion for you. Don't rush my process. Don't fight my pace. Walk beside me. Even when the road seems slow, and you will look back with tears of thankfulness for every door I kept closed, every person I removed, every season I prolonged. My timing is not just correct. It is divine, flawless, surgical. Let me finish what I started, and when it arrives, it will fit without forcing, it will stay without striving, and it will bless you without burdening you. The delay is not the end, child. It's the doorway to my perfect unveiling. Every moment you sensed a discomfort you couldn't explain, every time a conversation left your spirit uneasy, every recurring dream that disturbed your sleep, that was me, trying to get your attention before destruction arrived dressed as opportunity. But instead of pausing to discern my voice, you brushed it off as overthinking, labeling it as anxiety or coincidence when in truth it was divine alertness rising within you. I've nudged you through people, interrupted your plans with delays, allowed certain doors to feel magnetic yet remain sealed, not to confuse you, but to preserve you from choosing paths that would fracture your purpose. I've sounded the alarm softly, not to scare you, but to show you the exit before your heart attached to what I never assigned. Some of what you've been calling bad luck was me blocking the detour before it became a disaster. But the more you push through the unease, the more you tune out my caution, the closer you move toward entrapments you weren't designed to endure. I didn't gift you discernment to ignore it. I gave it so you'd respond without needing chaos to confirm what peace already denied. Child, there were moments I spoke through your own hesitation. I tugged your spirit in rooms where your smile hid discomfort. I stirred your mind when you tried to justify what didn't align with truth. I unsettled your sleep when you tried to silence my presence. You keep asking for clear signs, but the clarity already arrived. It just didn't come how you expected. It came as friction, not thunder, as resistance, not flashing lights, as a subtle pause inside you when everyone else celebrated something I never endorsed. I've tried to stop you with kindness, with closed paths, with inner tension, but the more you override it, the louder the consequences will have to be. And I don't want to shout to rescue you from what you could have walked away from with just a whisper. I've warned you in ways that protect your dignity, in private moments, before exposure was necessary. But now you stand on a fragile edge where silence is no longer mercy, and if you won't respond to the nudge, I may have to break the pattern with interruption that feels harsh but is wrapped in deliverance. My child, you do not need a collapse to prove what I've already spoken through conviction. You do not need betrayal to believe I was shielding you from wolves beneath sheep's attire. You do not need heartbreak to see I was never in that relationship. I only allowed time for you to recognize it yourself, but you've grown accustomed to confusing consistency with approval. Just because something persists doesn't mean I permitted it. Sometimes I allow repeated warnings because I'm giving you a chance to leave quietly, without pain, without exposure. But time is narrowing, and I cannot let you remain attached to what's draining your destiny. Listen to me. There is danger ahead if you continue pretending you don't hear me, and I will intervene, even if my intervention feels like everything crumbling, because I would rather let you fall for a moment than allow your soul to be chained for a lifetime. Don't keep asking me for peace about something I already gave you discomfort for. That unrest inside you is the confirmation you've been ignoring. I'm not asking you to fear. I'm asking you to obey, even when it's uncomfortable, because the longer you delay your response, the more tangled the consequences will become. And child, I love you too deeply to watch you walk into something you weren't created for. So I'm speaking again. Louder now, clearer now, closer now. Stop waiting for disaster to validate what your spirit already knows. I've been whispering for too long. Now I need you to move. The window is not shut, but the light slipping through it is thinning fast. And if you don't move while grace is still stretching its arms toward you, the regret that follows will not be because I turned away, but because you waited too long to respond. I have held open the pathway longer than you know, prolonged opportunities you didn't even realize were about to expire, withheld judgment that could have arrived already, not because I'm soft, but because I'm merciful beyond measure. Yet mercy was never meant to be mistaken as approval of delay. It is not permission to procrastinate. It is a final gesture to help you realign before the door becomes sealed. I know what it cost me to create that opening for you, and I know how much you've hesitated at the threshold, unsure if you were ready to walk away from what you now realize never honored who you are in me. I have not taken your silence lightly. I have heard your inner cries, watched the war between your loyalty to comfort and your craving for breakthrough. And I have waited. I have waited when you put other voices above mine. I have waited when you distracted yourself with plans that never carried my instruction. I have waited when you allowed busyness to bury what was eternal. But now that wait is no longer endless, I am drawing a line not because I want to exclude you, but because I need to protect you from consequences that do not bend to sentiment. Time is sacred, child, and too much of it has been surrendered to what cannot accompany you into the future I crafted for you before you were born. I'm not here to pressure you. I'm here to alert you, to jolt your soul before you become numb to the knocking you've already ignored too long. You think another day will come, another season will open, another chance will appear. But what if this one was the turning point? What if what you're postponing now was the rescue you'll wish you grabbed later? I've seen too many walk past moments like this and later ask me why I didn't stop them harder. And I don't want you to be among them. Your time is not yet gone, but it's no longer abundant. And if you keep assuming the rhythm of delay is harmless, you will wake up in a place where your choices feel permanent and my voice feels distant. Not because I abandoned you, but because you walked so far into noise that clarity became drowned out. The urgency I speak with now is not to frighten. It is to shield, to call you back before numbness turns into silence, and silence turns into captivity. Child, this is your turning hour. Not tomorrow, not later tonight, not after one more attempt to do it your way. This is the sacred now where everything shifts if you decide it's finally time to trust me completely, not just verbally but with actions that echo your surrender. And no, I'm not angry. I'm broken-hearted that you've carried burdens I would have removed had you just stepped in when I called. I'm not ashamed of your slowness. I'm saddened by the pain it added that never had to be written into your story. But despite all that, I still stand here, extending this moment, inviting you to act not out of guilt, but out of wisdom, out of love, out of a knowing that you're not designed to stay where you've been battling just to breathe. You've grown too familiar with delay, too comfortable with postponement, too tolerant of cycles that rob your peace, and I'm here to say, this is the final lap before the doors close and this season concludes. Respond now, because waiting again might cost you everything that's trying to find you right now. I see you standing at the edge of decision, trembling not because you don't believe I am real, but because you are afraid of what obedience might cost. But I must tell you, the price of hesitation is far greater than the discomfort of surrender. The space you're in now, the pause between my invitation and your response, is narrowing, not because I want to pressure you, but because delay corrodes destiny when it's allowed to linger. You've been given countless nudges, dreams that stirred your spirit, unexpected confirmations, moments where you felt me so near it made your heart race. And still, you've allowed logic to drown out conviction, busyness to bury my whisper, and fear to blur what I made vividly clear. But hear me, this threshold you're hesitating to cross will not remain open indefinitely. There is a shift coming, a divine pivot, and you were not meant to observe it from a distance but to walk in the center of it with me. I know the voice in your head tells you you're not qualified, not pure enough, not consistent. But I never called you because you were flawless. I summoned you because you were chosen before you even knew how to call on me. The time I gave you wasn't for stalling. It was for preparing, purging, positioning, and moving. And if you continue to analyze instead of answer, the spiritual ground beneath you will begin to dry up, not as punishment, but as protection. Because where I'm leading next, only full-hearted obedience can sustain you. Child, you cannot keep one foot in compromise and the other in covenant. Not now. Not when the line between light and counterfeit is being drawn so boldly across the earth. You feel the trembling beneath the surface of your soul because my spirit is stirring the deep. Not to confuse you, but to shake loose every illusion that made you think comfort could carry you into your calling. No, it's courage that opens the gate. It's yielding that unlocks the assignment. And I am not asking you for perfection. I am asking for motion, a step, a gesture, A move that shows me you've heard and will no longer stall what was meant to start already. You say you're waiting for confirmation, but in truth, I've already revealed more than enough. Your delay is no longer about lack of clarity, but about reluctance to let go of what I've already told you cannot follow you into your future. And yes, it hurts. Detaching from what became familiar always tears at the soul, but it also makes space for me to restore what was lost while you were surviving without purpose. I need you to understand this moment is not routine. It is sacred, it is critical, and it is pulsing with eternal weight. If you bypass it, there will be mercy, yes, but there will also be missed territory, because every yes delayed rewrites timelines, and I want you aligned with what I intended for this very hour. You don't need another sign. You need to decide. You don't need another miracle to convince you. You need the resolve to walk forward even while trembling. I've seen your prayers. I've heard your aching. I've felt your hunger for breakthrough. But you must choose me now, not in pieces, not when it's convenient, not once the risk is gone, but now, while the atmosphere is still open for transformation. I have waited, stretched time, cleared distractions, softened hearts around you, even rerouted events to buy you more space. But that space is closing, and this is your alert, not out of anger, but from urgency, not to shame you, but to pull you up before the tide shifts and you're left wondering what could have happened had you acted when the fire burned inside you. The door is still ajar, but I cannot guarantee it will remain that way for much longer. Amen.